Zara, you need to see this. It's Jackson. He's not who you think he is, my niece Mia said, her voice shaking as she showed me a photo on her phone. I stared in disbelief at the image. A candid shot of my husband Jackson with his arm around a tall blonde woman, laughing together at the airport. My stomach dropped. What? This can't be real, I said, my voice hollow. I snapped it yesterday when I was picking up my friend from her flight. I knew if I didn't show you, you'd never believe me, Aunt Zara, Mia replied. I felt sick with dread but tried to remain calm. Did you talk to him? Maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Mia shook her head. He didn't see me, but from how cozy they looked, I don't think it was just a friend. My mind reeled. Jackson and I had been married for 12 years. Was he really cheating on me? That night at dinner, I cautiously brought it up. Mia said she saw you with another woman at the airport yesterday, I began. Jackson laughed loudly, making me jump. Mia's got an active imagination, doesn't she? I picked up a client visiting from Dallas to show her a property. That's all. He scoffed. I searched his face for any hint of deception, but found none. Still, over the next few weeks, doubts plagued me. Jackson worked later, went on mysterious trips, and spent more time texting. One day, acting on impulse, I checked his pockets while doing laundry. In his crumpled pants was a hotel keycard and receipt for a suite at the Sebastian, downtown's most lavish hotel. Fueled by adrenaline, I grabbed my car keys. Time to learn the truth. I arrived at the hotel, hands trembling, and took the elevator to the fifth-floor suite. As I raised my hand to knock, the door swung open, and there was Jackson, half-dressed with the same blonde from Mia's photo. Cassidy, I thought you were just... Jackson froze mid-sentence when he saw me. Zara! He cried. What are you doing here? My body shook with rage and anguish. I was right not to trust you, I choked out. The blonde, Cassidy, slunk out, avoiding eye contact. Jackson scrambled for his shirt. Zara, I can explain. Don't bother, I said coldly. Without another word, I turned and strode rapidly toward the elevators, tears stinging my eyes. His web of lies had finally unraveled. My husband was not the man I thought I knew at all. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind racing. How long had Jackson's affair been going on? And how had I never noticed? When I finally returned home, Jackson was waiting on the porch. Thank God, I was so worried, he said, rushing toward me. I backed away, repulsed. Don't come near me, you liar, I said sharply. Jackson's facade crumbled. Baby, I messed up, okay? I didn't mean for it to happen. Save it, I snarled. I saw you with her at the hotel. Her name's Cassidy, right? Jackson paled. Cassidy? She doesn't mean anything to me, Zara. It was just a stupid fling. I fought the urge to slap him. A fling? We're married. How long has this been going on? He turned his gaze downward. I don't know. A few months, maybe? Months, I cried. Blinding fury washed over me. Without thinking, I grabbed my suitcase from the front closet and started throwing clothes inside. Whoa, take it easy, Jackson said, eyes wide. Where are you going? I'm leaving. Obviously, I scoffed bitterly. I'll be at my sister's. Panic flashed across Jackson's face. He blocked my path to the door. Be reasonable, Zara. You don't have to leave. I pushed past him, seething. I won't stay under the same roof as a lying, cheating snake. Jackson chased me to my car. I said I was sorry. I'll end things with Cassidy, I swear. We can get counseling, move past this. I whirled around to face him one last time, tears stinging my eyes. The man I loved would never betray me like this. I don't know who you are anymore. Jackson, we're done. I peeled out of the driveway just as the tears began to fall, leaving Jackson helplessly shouting after me. My heart ached with grief and bitterness, but I refused to let him see me crumble. He wasn't worthy of my tears. Now I knew the painful truth about the stranger Jackson had become. It was time to pick myself back up. I spent the next few days at my sister Ivy's apartment trying to process it all. But my raging mind wouldn't rest. I had to know more, like how Jackson financed his sordid affair when we struggled to save money every month. I met my friend AJ, a tech wizard, for lunch. Can you track someone's credit card purchases without them knowing? I asked. His eyes widened. On the dark web, sure. This about Jackson? I nodded, steeling my nerves. Later, AJ sent me a list of expensive hotel charges over the past 4 months and jewelry purchases. Must be for his mistress, AJ noted. The reality sunk like a stone in my gut. Jackson hadn't just cheated, he'd spent a fortune on Cassidy behind my back. Fury simmered inside me. It was time to uncover the extent of my husband's betrayal. If he thought he could get away with it, he was dead wrong. A few days later, I bought hair dye, preppy clothes, and blue contact lenses, the perfect disguise to follow Jackson unnoticed. I told Ivy I needed to work, but really, I was parked outside Jackson's office, spying from a rental car. At noon, Jackson finally emerged, stopping at the florist. To my disgust, he exited carrying a massive bouquet of roses. He continued downtown, ducking into the Sebastian, the same hotel where I'd caught him with Cassidy. This time, instead of barging into their suite, I discreetly trailed Jackson to the bar where Cassidy waited in a slinky dress that likely cost more than my car. Jackson kissed her, grinning. My blood boiled. Just then, Jackson's phone rang. His face fell. "It's the hospital," he told Cassidy. "Let me take this outside." As Jackson hurried out, I seized the chance, sliding onto the bar stool beside Cassidy. She glanced at me, puzzled. "I know what you're doing with my husband," I said fiercely. Cassidy recoiled. "Excuse me? I don't even know you." "I'm Zara, Jackson's wife," I said coldly. Cassidy paled, speechless. Before she could respond, Jackson returned, ashen-faced. His eyes darted wildly between us. "Zara?" he croaked. "There's been an accident. My dad." He wavered on his feet. My anger evaporated, replaced by shock. Despite everything, I still cared for him once. I took his arm gently. "Come on," I said quietly. "Let's get you to the hospital." Cassidy backed away wordlessly into the crowd as I led Jackson outside, holding back my whirlwind of accusations, for now. At the hospital, Jackson collapsed into a chair, head in hands. "The nurse said Dad's car was hit by a drunk driver. He's in surgery now," Jackson choked out. My heart ached for him. I clasped his shoulder gently. "He'll pull through. Your dad's resilient." Jackson nodded wordlessly. Hours passed with no update. When the nurse finally appeared, her somber expression said it all. Jackson's dad hadn't made it. Jackson dissolved, sobbing uncontrollably. I held him close, letting his tears soak into my shirt. Despite Jackson's ghastly choices, he was still family. Over the next few days, as funeral arrangements were made, I supported Jackson quietly behind the scenes, putting my simmering fury on hold. The day of the funeral came, a small, mournful affair. After the burial, I drove Jackson back to his place so he could change for the wake. But when we pulled up, police swarmed the sidewalk. "What happened?" Jackson asked a cop. "Nasty wreck earlier. Speeding vehicle crashed into that tree. 2 people were critically injured." Dread filled my stomach. As the ambulance pulled away, I spotted a flash of blonde hair on the stretcher. Cassidy. Jackson blanched. He must have realized, too. We followed the police to the hospital and learned Cassidy had been driving Jackson's beloved vintage Mercedes, with Jackson in the passenger seat when she lost control. The officer shook his head. Witnesses said she raced through 2 red lights before crashing. We suspect drunk driving. The news stunned me. Jackson could have died cheating on me with Cassidy. Overwhelmed, I stepped aside to compose myself. A nurse approached with an evidence bag containing Jackson's damaged cell phone cracked from the wreck. "We can hold his personal effects until he's released," she offered gently. On impulse, I took the phone. "I'll handle it, thanks," I murmured. Once Jackson stabilized, they'd transfer him to a regular room. I had time to access his phone, to understand the full picture. I met my friend Ajay at his repair shop and handed him the phone. "Any chance you can get inside this to access text messages and photos?" "Shouldn't be an issue," Ajay said. Within the hour, he'd downloaded the data onto a disk. "I don't know what you're looking for, but seems like this guy's up to no good," Ajay warned. My hands trembled, imagining what secrets the disk held. "That's what I'm afraid of," I said gravely. Alone at home, I loaded the disk on my laptop with trembling hands. Photo after sorted photo filled the screen. Jackson and Cassidy entwined, wearing nothing. Receipts and texts arranging their trysts covered months. Even worse, screenshots showed Jackson transferring money from my personal account into his, thousands of dollars gone. I squeezed my eyes shut, tasting bile. The man I'd loved for 12 years had stolen my money to finance his affair, deceiving me at every turn. It was time to make Jackson face the truth and pay the price for his callous betrayal. Armed with the incriminating data from Jackson's phone, I set up a meeting with my lawyer, Carlos. He scanned through the evidence, eyebrows rising. "This is quite serious," Carlos said. "Illicit transfers from your personal account without permission constitutes fraud and theft. Combined with the affair, you have solid grounds for divorce." My chest tightened. After 12 years together, divorcing Jackson felt unreal. Let's focus first on freezing your joint accounts before he empties them, Carlos continued. I'll also file a temporary restraining order. When he's discharged, legally he cannot come near you or the home you share. I nodded, steeling my nerves. The cold machinations now seemed necessary. 2 days later, I sat rigidly in Carlos's tight office as he made the call, confronting Jackson over speakerphone. Mr. Kent, I represent your wife, Zara. We have evidence here of fraud and infidelity. As of now, your joint accounts are frozen. You're also legally prohibited from approaching Miss Kent or your shared residence per the temporary restraining order issued this morning. The line went silent. Finally, Jackson sputtered in rage. Who the hell do you think you are? You can't just lock me out. Carlos glanced at me. The court order says otherwise, Mr. Kent. Will you comply, or shall I have officers waiting at your discharge? You betch, Jackson snarled. You won't get away with this, Zara. That's my house, too. I flinched but kept my tone cool. I'm done being your personal ATM, Jackson. Consider this the consequence of your actions. The call ended explosively, with Jackson hurling threats until nurses hauled him away. Shaken, I retreated home, now owned solely by me. For days, tension knotted my stomach as I awaited Jackson's next move. A week later, the doorbell rang. My eyes widened in alarm until I saw Jackson's sister Harper on the video feed. I swung the door open. Harper, is everything okay? She shifted on her feet. Hey, Zara, do you have a minute? I waved her in, puzzled. Since the funeral, I hadn't seen Harper or the rest of Jackson's family. Harper sat down, not meeting my eyes. I heard about the restraining order and Jackson cleaning out your accounts. My shoulders slumped as I sank down beside her. You probably think I'm just bitter and crazy, but he was cheating on me for months, Harper, and stealing money to fund his lifestyle with some woman named Cassidy. Harper nodded slowly. I know. I didn't at first, but I overheard Jackson on the phone with Cassidy. The things he said, the way he spoke to her. She shuddered. He was cruel, degrading. I realized I didn't know my own brother anymore. Tears shone in Harper's eyes. My heart twisted in empathy. Betrayal by family cut especially deep. Harper grasped my hand fiercely. You did the right thing escaping from him, Zara. What he did was unforgivable, and I want to help you make sure he doesn't get away with it. Relief washed over me. I wasn't alone anymore in this fight. Harper's solidarity awakened a powerful sense of vindication. With the truth exposed, Jackson would finally reap the misery he'd sown, starting with losing his most precious relationships, the foundation of his deceitful life. In the weeks following my confrontation with Jackson, I leaned heavily on Harper's support. We met often for coffee or wine, hashing out my next moves. Have you decided whether you'll meet him in court or settle outside? Harper asked one evening. I swirled the wine in my glass. Jackson's too volatile for meetings. I'll let the judge force him to pay up. Harper nodded firmly. Good. He deserves the public shame. I sighed. My lawyer says proving the affair gives us leverage for maximum restitution, but rehashing all the sordid details. I shook my head, pained. Harper clasped my hand. You're so much stronger than Jackson gives you credit for, Zara. Don't worry. I'll be right by your side when you face him in court. Her steadfast solidarity bolstered me. With Harper at my side, I could withstand Jackson's wrath long enough to expose his deceit in court. Financial restitution seemed hollow compared to what I'd lost, but hitting Jackson where it hurt most was the only path to justice. A few days before our hearing, Jackson shocked us both by showing up unannounced at my door, ignoring the restraining order. Zara, please, can we talk about this? He implored, clutching wilted flowers. Before I could react, Harper appeared behind me. Get off this property before I call the police, Jackson, she threatened. Jackson's face darkened. Stay out of this, Harper. This is between me and my wife. The possessive way he said my wife made my skin crawl. Harper stepped forward furiously. Former wife, because you decided to lie and steal instead of honoring your vows. I always defended you, Jackson, but now you disgust me. Jackson flushed angrily. You know nothing, Harper. This witch turned my whole family against me. He jabbed his finger at me. My fury boiled over. You did this to yourself, Jackson. Now get out before the cops drag you out. With a menacing glare, Jackson stormed off. I sagged in relief against Harper. Tomorrow, come hell or high water, my ex would get exactly what he deserved. At the courthouse, Harper squeezed my shoulder as we took our seats. I'm right here with you, she murmured. Across the aisle, Jackson sat alone, his eyes swollen and hair disheveled. For an instant, pity tempered my simmering vitriol. Then I remembered the trauma his lies inflicted, and my resolve strengthened. When the judge called my name, I strode forward steadily. I would walk out of here vindicated and finally free from Jackson's poisonous hold. Please describe for the court the events that led to today's hearing, the judge prompted gently. I steadied myself. I learned my husband Jackson was having an affair. When I confronted him, he promised to end things, but he continued sneaking around behind my back. I proceeded to calmly detail Jackson's lies and deceit over months, culminating in stealing my money to fund his lavish outings with his mistress Cassidy. Jackson's lawyer questioned me vigorously, but faltered when I presented the evidence from Jackson's phone. The judge considered me soberly. This deception went on at length. Why stay with a serial philanderer and fraud? I stood taller. Because I loved him once, deeply. I'm here now because his actions forced me to protect myself. The judge nodded and turned to Jackson. Mr. Kent, how do you plead to these allegations of infidelity, fraud, and theft? Jackson burst out of his chair. It's bull, all of it. She's making me out to be a monster over one mistake. He pointed at me, hand shaking. Murmurs filled the courtroom. The judge pounded his gavel sharply. That's enough, Mr. Kent. Maintain composure or I'll hold you in contempt. Jackson slowly sat but glared at me malevolently. I glared back, undaunted. After a painfully long debate, the judge rendered his verdict in my favor. The evidence presented confirms Mr. Kent violated marital trust through chronic infidelity and fraud. As restitution, this court orders an equitable division of assets, including one-time alimony payment to Ms. Zara Kent. He banged the gavel finality. I hugged Harper tightly in dizzy relief. It was over. I was free. At the plaintiff's table, Jackson stood slowly, regarding me with icy calmness. Congratulations, Zara. You won, he said cuttingly. I hope destroying my life was worth it. Adrenaline coursed through me. I didn't destroy anything. I just revealed the truth, something you could never face. I held his gaze unflinchingly. We're over, Jackson. This was your doing. His lips curled in a snarl. You'll regret this, Zara, he spat venomously. Before the bailiffs could react, he stormed out. I stood frozen, pulse thrumming. Harper gripped my shoulder. Don't let him scare you. His threats are just pathetic attempts at control, she said. He's the one who needs to move on now. I nodded, shaking off my unease. She was right. Jackson no longer had any hold over me. And once his family and Cassidy realized the truth too, he'd truly be left with nothing. A fitting outcome for his cruelty. In the months following the trial, I finally felt I could breathe again. Jackson vanished from my life just as completely as our marriage had. Only Harper provided glimpses of his downward spiral. His girlfriend Cassidy left him when she found out about the money he owes you, Harper revealed over lunch one day. And without her bankrolling his lifestyle, he's scrambling. I shook my head. After all the warnings about her, now he's alone and struggling? Talk about karma. Harper smiled ruefully. Also, quite the scandal for his career. Clients dropped him when word of the lawsuits got around. While I took no pleasure in Jackson's misery, it was clear he deserved it. And the alimony checks he resentfully sent each month ensured I could rebuild my life. On my birthday a few months later, Harper stopped by with champagne and news. Cheers to your fresh start, we clinked glasses. I actually have an update on Jackson's current crash and burn, she added. I raised an eyebrow. His ruined career and relationships were already karmic payback. So get this, Harper continued, leaning in furtively. Jackson put his house on the market. He's so desperate for cash, he sold it way under value. My eyes widened. His dream house that he made me sacrifice for? Geez. Almost sheepishly, Harper went on. Well, funny you should mention sacrifice, because the buyer was Ray Hernandez. I nearly choked on my champagne. Ray? My ex that Jackson always hated? Harper nodded, grinning. Yep, Ray seized the chance to stick it to Jackson, and Jackson was apparently seething, but financial hands were tied. The irony was so absurd I burst out laughing. Jackson's precious house ending up with his nemesis Ray? You really couldn't make this stuff up. In his greed and dishonesty, Jackson had sabotaged everything stable in his life. Now all that remained was facing the music alone. And music never sounded sweeter. To good riddance, Harper cheered, raising her glass again triumphantly. The relief I'd yearned for was finally here. Freedom from Jackson's toxicity and lies. His bitterness over losing our old house to my ex was just icing on the cake of karma, now enjoying her sweet revenge. And I planned to relish every bite.